our thank you for joining our stakeholder committee meeting today. It's hard to believe it's the beginning of October, but as you're aware, it's been a busy year for this project, so we have some good updates to share with you today. Next slide. So we'll start just with some introductions. We won't spend too much time. I think most of the folks I see on the call have been engaged, but if you are new to the project, please indicate so in the chat. And just so everyone knows, if you don't know, I'm Ryan Knowles. I'm the Bus Rapid Transit Program Manager with CDOT Region 1. And we have some of our team here with us today. Morgan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, yes. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Morgan Marion. I am on the public engagement and outreach team for the project.
And Dominic?
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Dominic Ficani and I'm on the same team with Morgan.
And Melinda?
Or afternoon, everybody. I'm Melinda Reese with FHU, and I'm the consultant deputy project manager.
And Adam?
Hey there, everyone. I'm Adam Spiker, an engineer in the CDOT Region 1 Bus Rapid Transit Program.
Okay, so like I said, if anyone is new to the meeting, please drop your name in the chat, and I'd like to meet you. But today we are going to cover some of our public engagement work and some upcoming events that we have planned, and then really spend most of the time talking about the 30% design. So this is a major milestone we reached earlier in the summer, and so we've been meeting in a lot of coordination with our partners at the City and County of Denver, Adams County, City of Westminster, City of Federal Heights, DRCOG, and of course RTD. So we have some good things to share there. And then we'll spend a lot of time on questions and comments and any feedback you have for us. Next slide. Okay, so for public engagement, we have through the end of September, so just last week, over the life of the project, we have attended over 130 public events or pop-ups. So these are neighborhood festivals, like in the picture you see. I believe that might have been the Highland Arts Festival, or another one of the festivals in Denver. But we've been to quite a few of those, as well as many of the locations in the corridor where we've set up tables and just talked to folks as they are coming and going through their normal daily activities. These included our TD stations, so the Decatur and Federal Station, Clear Creek and Federal, Evans Transfer Center, etc., as well as recreation centers and libraries. And we were even at a grocery store, although we didn't catch a lot of folks there. So I don't know if that was a super fruitful event. But in addition, we've also held 3 open houses. So those were held in May of 2024, and we have some more planned, which I'll talk about in a moment. We have been sending out e-newsletters. So those have been coming out on roughly a monthly basis. So you may have received those. And we have also spent some time on local Spanish radio, discussing the project in Spanish language with listeners there. We are really trying to increase our outreach to Spanish speakers and Vietnamese speakers. So, a little over half of the outreach we've done has included some Spanish or Vietnamese engagement in regard to translation or interpretation. However, we are always looking for more opportunities to engage folks in those languages. So if the stakeholder committee is able to help us with that, that would be greatly appreciated. So if you have any ideas, please share them at today's meeting, drop them in the chat, or we can discuss them. Feel free to reach out, email. We're always looking for more opportunities to talk to anyone and everyone we can. Next slide. So we are planning 2 open houses at the end of the month, and these will be to share information about the design as well as our environmental review consistent with the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA. So we'll have a lot of information in regard to our analysis on environmental, social, historic impacts, as well as the overall project design, including the station designs and locations. So the 2 open houses will be held at the MAC on the north end of the corridor. So that's roughly at the intersection of Federal Boulevard and 72nd Avenue. So that will be on Wednesday, October 29th, starting at 5 p.m. And then the Westwood Community Center, so in the southern part of the corridor in the city and county of Denver. It's on Lowell Avenue, or Boulevard rather, but it's just off of Federal Boulevard, so not too far from Federal Boulevard itself. And that'll be on Thursday, October 30th at 5 p.m. as well. Additionally, we are also going to be holding a property owners meeting. And so this is to discuss with owners of property on Federal Boulevard some of our surveying efforts, which are needed to understand where the legal property line is. So where CDOT right-of-way starts and ends is an important part of the development of the design going forward. So we're holding that on October 15th, and we have been reaching out to property owners about that. So if any of the folks on the call is a property owner and has not heard about this meeting, you should have received a letter, but if you for some reason did not, please reach out and we'll be happy to share that information with you. Next slide. Okay. So 30% design. So as I mentioned, we have really spent the last year working on our preliminary engineering design. So this is based off of all of the planning work that was done before CDOT actually started the project. So our partners had done quite a bit of work. And then we picked it up in 2023, 24, and really developed over the past year plus this 30% design, which is the groundwork for the final construction plans and ultimately the implementation of the project. So we spent a lot of time looking at a lot of the specific issues on Federal Boulevard, including the roadway, the station locations and design, as I mentioned, drainage, pedestrian access, property access. So lots of different things are included in this design. But what I'll do today is I'll talk about what it looks like in some specific locations, and then we can get into more detail if you have any questions. At the open houses, we'll have roll plots, which will show how the design is laid out for the entire 18 miles of Federal Boulevard between Dartmouth Avenue and 120th Avenue. So certainly if you have questions about what the design looks like in front of a specific address, that would be the best place to see that. Next slide. So there are some big changes that we are including in the design. So one of them is at 14th Avenue and Howard Place and Federal Boulevard. So this is right in front of the CDOT headquarters building. This is one of the deadliest intersections on the corridor and maybe in the city of and county of Denver. But unfortunately, there have just been a ton of crashes at this location in the last several years, and some of them have resulted in someone dying. So we took a very comprehensive look at what was going on at the intersection and what was contributing to those crash issues, and certainly have been coordinating closely with the city and county of Denver, who have already been doing some work to do some short-term changes. But these are some really large capital improvements that we're planning. So I'll go through them. So you can see the numbers on the rendering showing you, number one, where the BRT stations are. where we're adding bus lanes, and where there's transit signal priority. However, that doesn't tell the entire story of all the changes that are being made. So overall, what we're doing at this intersection is really trying to better organize where movements occur. So where number 1 is BRT station northbound, you can see where the existing bus shelter is that connects to the rail line, the W line at the Decatur and Federal station by the stairs. Our intention is to replace that shelter with a larger station, which will have a station platform, and really bump out the area of that station. So today there are 3 through lanes and a right turn lane going northbound on that leg of the intersection. So we're going to reduce that. So there will be 2 through lanes, and then the right turn lane will become a right turn and bus lane, so a shared bus lane. So really the intent there is to, 1, shorten the crossing of that particular south leg sidewalk, or sorry, crosswalk, because of the high numbers of pedestrians that use it today. And then reclaiming that area also allows us to add in a median nose, which will help reduce the speed of left turning vehicles from Howard Place, and also provide a little bit of a pedestrian refuge for pedestrians if they get caught between the light signal cycles. So really trying to tighten up that south leg. On the east leg on Howard Place, you can see there's a curb extension on the north side that will replace an existing right turn bypass lane. So there's a bypass lane, a free right that drivers using Howard Place can take to go to Federal Boulevard northbound. So that'll be replaced by this curb extension, so that right turn lane will no longer exist. And then you can see to the left-hand side of the rendering, the ramps connecting to Colfax will be realigned. So these are one of a few contributing issues to crashes at the intersection, particularly the ramp connecting Colfax to Federal southbound, which is just off the screen. Today, it basically ends right at the stop bar of Federal and 14th. And so it's a highway style ramp. It really tends to just dump speeding cars right into the intersection. And so we want to avoid that by realigning it and have it be more of a stop and turn condition. So more like a traditional right turn intersection. And then northbound, today, the ramp is much closer to CDOT than it is in the picture you see on the screen. And so by moving it a little north and again, making it more of a right turn situation rather than like an on-ramp for a freeway, we really will hopefully reduce the amount of vehicles that are speeding through Federal Boulevard northbound at that intersection. So again, really trying to tighten up this intersection to better organize it and then include the bus lanes northbound and southbound. Next slide. So here's an example of the bus bypass lane and queue jump that we have planned for 38th Avenue and Federal Boulevard. So what you see on the screen is an extension of an existing right turn lane. So what we'll be doing is extending the lane to be what we call a bus bypass lane. And so the bus will be able to get over before the intersection into this shared right turn lane. And the condition at the intersection will be that all vehicles will turn right where you see the right turn arrow, except for buses, which will have what we call a queue jump. So it's a special signal that allows the bus to go before the other 2 signal heads turn green. So they'll be red and the bus will have its own signal to go. And then where number 1 is will be the location of the northbound 38th BRT station. And so that will allow the bus to get around queued up traffic at 38th, particularly in the busier parts of the day. That'll help reduce the delay in that part of the corridor. And then on the southbound location, there will be a very similar configuration. You can't see it in this picture here just because there's some cars in the way, but there will be a lane just like this going southbound on the north side of the intersection, and then that will allow the bus to get to the station going southbound, which is just off the left of the screen. Next slide.
And we do have a couple of questions on speeding. We can address those here after we get done with this section, or we can take them now.
Let's get through this section and then we'll talk about those, if that works for everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. Okay, and then 112th Avenue. So this is another important intersection that will see some pretty major changes, particularly for the northbound part of the corridor. So 112th is the street on which the Front Range Community College campus is, just west of Federal Boulevard. And so this is a major location for transfers to other bus services, particularly because the Federal Boulevard BRT will continue north on Federal Boulevard, whereas the number 31, which it'll replace, turns west on 112th to Front Range Community College. We want to ensure that we're making sure the transfer between the future Federal Boulevard BRT and the 112 and 114 routes that serve Front Range Community College, we want to make sure that that's as efficient a transfer as possible. Some of our early modeling shows that we can actually improve the overall travel time to Front Range Community College by optimizing those transfers versus having the hourly 31 service today. But in the picture, you can see in the foreground, we will be removing another right turn bypass lane and bumping out the corner of Federal Boulevard. This is the northeast corner to build that station area where you see number 1. And so there'll be a new sidewalk and some new landscaping there. And then in the median, there again will be a median nose providing protection from left turning vehicles. And ultimately, we will be working with RTD to address existing stop locations for the 112 and 114, again, to make that transfer much easier for folks who are trying to get to and from Front Range Community College. Okay. Oh, and I should say, sorry. So in this section, you can see the curbside bus lanes. They're a little hard in the foreground, but in kind of the background on the left, you can see the red paint. But there are bus lanes in this section as well. So 2 through lanes and a bus lane in each direction. Next slide. So I think, have covered this with the stakeholder committee before. So the proposed bus station locations have largely remained the same. I think in the last stakeholder meeting, we covered the shift from 35th Avenue to 32nd Avenue. So we are moving forward with that. So other than that, no changes, except that we are now thinking about future connections to the proposed development at Burnham Yard, with the prospect of change at the Mile High stadium site and the shift to Burnham Yard. We want to ensure that, particularly connecting to 13th Avenue, there is good connection with the Decatur and Federal Station. And so we're thinking about what that looks like, but I did want to just point that out. Next slide. And then this is our preliminary station design, which I think we've also shared with the stakeholder committee before. But again, it has the same height platform as is being constructed on Colfax BRT right now, so about 13 inches, so near level. And this is the station canopy architecture that we developed through the stakeholder and technical working group process. And my lights just went off. I don't know how to make that change. So we'll just continue going forward here. Sorry, I'm at Adams County Government Center today, so a new room for me. But you can see in the picture the ticket vending machine on the right-hand side of the platform, as well as the wayfinding and the station signage, the windscreens that we've discussed before. So as a reminder, the prevailing winds when we did our wind study showed that most of the wind is coming from the west side of the corridor, and so we wanted to ensure that there was a cutout in the middle of the station so that folks could get on the other side of the windscreen if it was, really windy or there was sideways rain. We did look at the way that rain typically falls, and the station roof is adjusted to help maximize coverage for riders waiting for the bus. And then you could see the seating as well.
Hey, Ryan, would this be a good place to pause maybe? We've had a few other questions in the chat just before we get to
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, great.
Okay.
All right. This one's from Alejandra. Any possibility of reducing driving speed limits all along the BRT corridor to 30 miles per hour?
We are looking at reducing speeds on the corridor, particularly in Denver, where so in the north part of Denver it's 35, and then south of Alameda it's 40. Our design speed through Denver is 30 miles an hour, and so our intent is to reduce the speed limit to 30 miles an hour in Denver. North of Denver, it changes based on section, but we are overall reducing speed limits. So I don't know exactly. I think north of 52nd, it goes down by 5 or 10 miles an hour. I'd have to double check, but yeah, we are reducing speed limits.
It looks like she raised her hand too. If you want to
Sure.
provide some other context on that, that would be great.
Thank you. Yeah. Hi, everybody. Hi, Ryan.
Hi.
So as you might recall, Sammy, a 16-year-old, was recently killed at 52nd and Federal.
Yes.
And what happens at 52nd, and he was on a scooter crossing Federal and trying to get to school. And at that location, the posted speed limit goes from 45 to 40 to 35 within blocks. And I have been reading studies that show that when that happens, when we design the roads in that way and we post different speed limits, it becomes more dangerous. And so if we could have consistent, safe, speed limits across the corridor, because people, and also I know that Westminster is going to be developing housing north of 52nd, so outside of Denver. If we can be proactive at designing a road that's not harmful, I would truly support that, and I would hope that the project team is thinking, in years to come as we develop more housing, as Regis University develops, the Regis Village location there and all of that. So thank you for that. And I can ask my other questions if that's okay really quickly.
Sure. Do you want me to, so just before you move on, Alejandra, so we are also looking at that specific intersection because we were aware of what happened there. But yeah, that's a good point, and certainly one that we're working with Denver staff on.
Thank you. And then at 14th and Howard, I noticed that oftentimes drivers don't respect the stop bar, or they kind of push the limit. And so placing the stop bars farther from the crosswalks might be helpful as well. I know Jill talked about raised crosswalks in her questions, which would be amazing as well. And we know that for sure makes it safer. And then also talking about 38th and Federal and the the picture that you showed with the bus using the right turn lane. Yeah, right there. What I notice happens often when I take the 31 bus and I get off, drivers going northbound, try to push themselves to make the green light, and then they block the crosswalk at the north, on the north side. And so if you're trying to catch the bus to connect with the 38th as a pedestrian, you're not able to cross because there's a car blocking your way. So anything that can be helped design-wise to prevent that from happening would also be helpful in making it safer.
Okay, yeah, that's good feedback. We'll take a look at that.
Thank you.
Hey, Ryan, do you mind if I chime in real quick?
Sure.
We do, in the actual design that you'll see in the roadblocks at the open houses, the stop bars are pulled back at Federal and 14th. That hadn't made it into the rendering, but Alejandra, that is included in our current design at that intersection.
Awesome, thank you.
Great, thank you so much for that. And then I'm not sure if we addressed, I know you mentioned Jill's comment. She asked about at 14th and Howard raised crosswalks. Could that also be considered? Did we talk about that? Apologies if I missed that.
We did not, and I don't know if that has come up in discussions with Denver staff. We can certainly talk about that. I think that probably would be something, Jill, if we were going to consider those, they would be on Howard and 14th for the north-south crosswalks. So we can certainly look at that.
Then we also have a question from Jill about connection. Are you also thinking about how Colfax BRT could be extended to connect to Federal?
So we are thinking about the overall Colfax and Federal intersection. So as I mentioned, we are planning to realign those ramps on the south side of the intersection or Cloverleaf. But we're also coordinating with the ongoing Reconnecting Communities project that is actually going to be starting relatively soon for the longer term vision of Colfax and Federal. And so I think, as we think about what that design looks like, we'll give a lot of consideration to transit transfers between Colfax and Federal Boulevard north of the Decatur and Federal Station.
Great, thank you. And then Jill, I saw you had another comment in the chat about the raised crosswalks. Let me know if you want to elaborate any more on that, or we can always follow up after the meeting as well.
Yeah, it just sounded like, Ryan, you were saying those raised crosswalks would only be considered as crosswalks across 14th and Howard Place as opposed to across Federal Boulevard. But according to NACDO's design guidelines, raised crosswalk speed tables can be implemented on streets with operating speeds up to 45 miles per hour, which is obviously way faster than we want for Federal Boulevard. So why could we not consider them on Federal Boulevard, given how serious the speeding problems are, particularly at this intersection?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I can look into it some more. I didn't mean to, write it off or anything like that. Generally speaking, I feel like that might be a hard sell if I'm going to be entirely honest, but I will certainly look into it.
Can you say more about why? I mean, this is like the most dangerous intersection in Denver. Like, why would we not be considering all these tools for improving safety?
My experience and this is just my experience with speed management and traffic calming, is generally speaking, raised things on arterials are really hard for emergency departments to accept. I don't want to speak for any of the emergency departments that would use Federal Boulevard because I haven't been in contact with them. But just, having worked on these types of projects in previous experiences, that has been my experience. But again, we'll look into it.
All right. And then one more question. We have one here from Derek. where he's asking about what assessments and analyzation have we done into traffic and like what are going to be some of the impacts to traffic, such as, additional congestion or how will some of the things that we've talked about impact vehicular traffic, I believe.
Yeah, Melinda, do you want to talk a little bit about where we are with our traffic analysis?
Yeah, for sure. So we are currently underway with the traffic analysis. And so unfortunately, we won't have those results yet for the public open house, but we are doing a detailed traffic analysis of the future condition, both and the way for projects like this, we do the traffic analysis, we actually look ahead to future years. So it's for 2045, looking at the project without the BRT lanes and BRT improvements, and then we'll also analyze the project with those improvements. So we'll have more details around what those impacts to traffic are. So yeah, there's more to come on that.
All right. I think we can keep going with the presentation for now, and I'll keep a look on the chat for any other questions.
Okay. I think we can go. Yes. So before we broke for questions, we were talking about the station, and then just to put the station design in context of what bus stops primarily look like on Federal Boulevard today. So many of the bus stops look like what is shown in number 1, which is at Federal Boulevard and 67th Avenue. So this is primarily just a sign on a post, which is on the sidewalk, but that's generally speaking what many of the bus stops on Federal Boulevard look like. So obviously the station will be a pretty big change for where we are converting those locations to stations. As a reminder, we are consolidating a lot of the existing bus stops into the stations, so there won't be as many potential stops, but a lot of these bus stops are not served well today. There are some stops on Federal Boulevard that are pretty high quality or higher quality, and I do want to recognize that. So number 2 is one of the nicer ones at Federal Boulevard and Exposition. So you can see the shelter with seating and a trash can and rider information, and then a nice wider sidewalk with that post and sign. So, I think one of the challenges, even with this nicer station or stop rather, is that the shelter may not feel very comfortable, particularly at night. There's probably not lighting inside of it. If you were sitting inside it, you may not be able to see people approaching. And so these are things that we really thought through with the design of the station structure. We heard a lot from folks that feeling safe and secure while they're waiting for the bus was a really important factor when they were considering if they would take the bus or not. And then for the folks who really rely on transit service on Federal Boulevard, that was a thing that we heard was a pretty poor existing condition. So that's something that we really wanted to work through in the overall station design. And then number 3 shows the southbound stop at Federal and 14th, just across the street from the rail station. And I just want to point this out because you can see there's a ton of people waiting for the bus, and there always is at that location, northbound and southbound. And particularly on the southbound side, there just isn't really much for people waiting for the bus other than a fence to lean against. And on the northbound side, there is a shelter, but it's relatively small and doesn't really fit all the people who are waiting to get on the bus going north or going west. And so, first and foremost, we are really improving the service for folks who are riding the bus today, and then hopefully building on that ridership going forward. Next slide. And then this graphic shows in a little more detail what all is included at the stations. So in addition to the platform and the structure that I mentioned, as well as the windscreens and the ticket vending machine, you can see letter G would be the overhead passenger information display telling you when the next bus is arriving. So similar to what you might see at the Decatur and Federal Station. Letter P shows an emergency call box. Q shows lighting, which will be on the station platform. And then there will also be lighting in the shelter itself, which is marked B. Letter N shows a video information display. So these are in some locations on the rail lines, and we're hoping to have these at some of the higher passenger ridership locations on Federal Boulevard as well. So not at every location, but at probably a handful, as well as trash cans and seating throughout the platform. The overall platform will be 60 feet long, so it'll accommodate a full articulated bus, and then there will be ADA ramps on either side of the platform so that folks can get up to the level of the bus. Next slide. So I think we have a lot of time for questions and comments, and certainly we can dig into any more of these design questions about the stations or the roadway more. I don't think we have any more slides, right, Morgan? Okay.
Nope, that's it.
Okay. So I think we can open it up. Are there any more in the chat to start with?
Nope, no more questions in the chat. I've been documenting everything in our notes, but I know we've been using the chat a lot, but if anyone does have any additional questions or comments, feel free to either raise your hand or unmute. We have plenty of time.
Alejandra.
Thank you. I was giving some seconds if anybody else wanted to say anything, but I wanted to say thank you for the careful attention to 14th and Federal, the Federal Decatur station. This has been a deadly intersection, also very undignified for too many years. And so I also appreciate you talking about how we are working to change how people travel along Federal. For those who can and are able to leave their car at home, to provide other options that are safer, less dangerous. And also because we're growing, as a metro region, and we cannot just continue to expand Federal to fit, single occupancy vehicles. And so we have to be mindful as to how we increase the people moving capacity of this corridor in a way that's less dangerous and more dignified. So I appreciate that. I also want to ask about environmental impacts. I know before, and forgive me if I don't remember the details, but we've asked sort of comparatively, what would happen if we don't give the bus its own lane across the entire corridor in regards to emissions and mode shift and all of that. So what are the environmental impacts of making these different decisions? Not just traffic studies are a common thing, but what about environmental study, noise studies, and also concerns with emergency response vehicles? I know that, and not just in talking about Federal, I know that I'm going on and on, but also because we're going to be trying to do this on Colorado and creating a network of bus rapid transit so people can truly leave their car at home, right? If I need to go over to Colorado from here and just move around the city or outside the city without driving. So I guess those are comments and some questions in regards to the environmental impact studies, noise studies, and emergency response vehicles, and how we are using this first codot-led BRT to make sure that we have better outcomes in other codot-led BRT projects.
Yeah, those are good questions. So I'll start with the noise. So we did look at noise impacts, and Melinda, feel free to jump in here. We considered the impacts of having a bus only lane versus a non-bus only lane, so operation and mixed traffic. And in terms of decibels, we did not find a significant difference between the two. It really just had more to do with the volume of vehicles rather than like distance from the vehicles if you're on the immediate sidewalk. Is that right, Melinda? Did I say that right?
Yeah, generally speaking, and I guess first off, I do want to say that at the public meeting, we will have boards on all the different environmental impacts. So there'll be more information, Alejandra, both at the public meetings in person and available online when we post those materials in just a couple of weeks here. But yeah, for noise in particular, generally speaking, we did not end up seeing a and noise is not my specialty, so the exact words that they use are escaping me, but essentially a difference large enough for somebody to perceive the difference between having the project and not having the project.
And then for air quality, which I think was another maybe another component of your question. So we do have we'll have a lot of information about air quality. I think generally speaking, what we'll find through our environmental analysis is that we're able to remove a pretty significant amount of vehicle miles traveled from the corridor, which is what we anticipate will be the biggest driver of improvements in air quality. The challenge, I think, overall is so we're going to be using a different transit vehicle. We'll be using the 60-foot articulated buses versus the 40-foot local buses that serve Federal Boulevard primarily today. And we'll be, for the entire length of the corridor, adding more than there are. So when you look at the numbers they don't tell you the whole story of about like the increase in transfers and connections to other transit services and, the overall long-term ability to improve transit travel across the city and across the region. They more just focus on the corridor and the immediate benefits of having those vehicles, or impacts rather, having those vehicles on the street. But we do anticipate a pretty significant decrease in vehicle miles traveled. And then to Jill's point, once we start realizing connections between BRT services and between rail lines, I think that's where you'll start to see just the mode shift overall get better. Alejandra, did I address all your questions, or were there more in there that I missed?
I think so. I guess I'll wait until I can see all of the information at the open houses. Thank you.
Okay.
And then we did have one other message in the chat from Dan. He asked if there were any updates on federal funding.
So we are moving forward with the project, and we have a strategy to phase it in our 10-year plan, although we don't really necessarily have the specifics of the phases developed as of yet. That'll be something that I think you can weigh in on at the open house. We are still continuing to pursue the Federal Transit Administration grant, but we're not necessarily banking on it, just with all the uncertainty in general with federal grant funding these days. We don't want to hang our hat on that. So long and short, we are pursuing it, but we're ready to build the project without it. Yes, Tim.
There was one other comment that Dan had in the chat that I thought was valuable about where the video displays go at the stations. And my thought in looking at your station design is that everything is really stretched out quite a long distance and not everything is under cover. So, the trash is way out at one end and things like that. Seems like thinking through how people are really going to utilize things, have protection If somebody's trying to read something on the screen in the middle of a rainstorm, those kinds of things would be good as you continue to develop the station design.
Yeah, that's great feedback. And I will say the station design is still, there's a lot of work to do. So certainly we can look at relocating some of those components.
Thanks.
I see, Derek, you had kind of a follow-up on the last question about funding. So that plan is still being developed, as I mentioned. But generally, what we've done in our 10-year plan going forward is we've created 2 phases for the Federal Boulevard BRT project. So the first phase would happen in the timeline that we have been planning. So starting construction in 2027 and then finishing before 2030. And then the second phase, should there not be federal funding and we move forward with state-only funding, or the funding that we currently have in our 10-year plan, that second phase would likely start in like 29 or 30. So it lengthens the overall implementation of the 18-mile project, but I think what we'll seek to do is address the certain parts of the corridor before others, and certain parts of the project before others, to get the transit service up and running.
Then we have another.
Yeah, Dan, see that question? So we haven't quite figured that out yet. So we will have kind of a high level idea, I think, that we'll share at the open house. We're kind of working through that right now with CDOT and Denver leadership. But you'll be able to see that information at the open house. Any other questions today? Any other thoughts about the overall project or the station?
All right. Well, I will just give one more plug for the open houses. Whenever we follow up either with the meeting notes or prior with that, if we turn those around quick, I'll follow up with a flyer for all of the open houses. That's in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese, just so that this group has it. If you have any other groups or organizations you're a part of, that flyer will be helpful to help invite folks out to our open houses. So I'll send that out following the meeting.
Alejandra, you have your hand raised.
Thank you. Yeah, just thinking about sort of lessons learned. Are you guys planning on having kind of study once the full implementation is done, and impacts on on ridership, on air quality, all of that, vehicle miles traveled, traffic to adjacent neighborhoods, which is also always a concern, or emergency vehicles? Are you planning on capturing all of this data so we can use it in the future?
Yes, yeah, I think we will certainly.
Sorry, one more thing. Sorry.
Sure.
And also whether a dedicated bus lane along the entire corridor is warranted and would make us even, move towards our climate goals and road shift goals and all of that more quickly.
Yes, yeah, and I think we at our previous stakeholder meeting had agreed to do some evaluation in the first year of the BRT opening where there isn't a bus lane, to determine what the ridership looked like, what the traffic impacts were, to assess if a bus lane could be added in those sections. So we're still committed to that. I would say, yeah, overall, we will be evaluating the project and taking lessons learned, carrying them into future BRT projects. We're certainly learning from the Colfax BRT project underway on, with the city and county in Denver, in terms of things that we could we could do with construction, learning about some of the phasing strategies that they have. So we've been in close coordination with that project team. So I think, as the BRTs continue to move forward, there just will be a lot to learn from each subsequent one that's implemented.
Cool. Thank you so much.
No problem.
We did have a question about the property owner meeting. Ryan or Adam, kind of explain who the mailed letters went to along the corridor.
Yeah, so the property owner meeting is a follow-up to letters that we had sent to property owners right on Federal Boulevard. So we're conducting our survey for the project right now. This is important for the next phase of the design and thinking about drainage and topologies and particularly legal definitions of right-of-way and private property. So, like with the design that we have now, we've based that on existing information we have, including aerial imagery as well as geographic information system-based information on where property lines are. But until you do a thorough survey and really find the property monuments and the markers, you can't in detail know where the actual legal definition of private versus public property is. And so the mailings that went out were specific to that process. So we have surveyors going out and basically needing to identify where that line is in a legal sense. And so they're doing that, and we're having this meeting basically to follow up on, are there questions about that process? Why is it occurring? So that's really the intent of the meeting, if that makes sense. I will say, however, as we move forward with the project and start thinking about the next design phase and then getting into and preparing for construction, we are thinking about a greater engagement with property owners and business owners, tenants in the corridor, and how best to engage with them early and often so that we understand as we think about phasing and thinking about where construction will occur and when it will occur, how we can hopefully mitigate impacts to businesses and ultimately, not have the project be something that is too painful. Dan, yes. Actually, Dan, on that point, if you have any lessons learned from West Colfax, that would be great.
Well, I guess the biggest concern there is that, we all know that we're in a tough funding environment everywhere, locally, nationally. And, with the idea that you all are starting on the back of existing funding for a time at least, I think that the real issue is that there's no dedicated funding stream as it stands for biofund, for the biofund, which has been used for construction mitigation funding. And so that's, I guess, I was going to raise this anyway, or I thought about raising this, but since it does seem that that's probably, the most important thing for businesses along the corridor, that there is this fund and that it's well funded because, even as it is right now on East Colfax, there are businesses that aren't qualifying that are, the way they have that fund is that you have to show losses of 20%. If you're at 20%, you are, on the threshold or maybe falling behind the line of survivability as a business, in terms of your loss of gross revenue. So, I mean, that's, having it go down to 15%, 10% would be great, but 15%, and then having a dedicated source so that the city isn't trying to, and Doty isn't trying to scrounge every year for a funding source for this, especially in this environment. I mean, it would be great if there was something that was akin, for example, to the 1% for public art or something like that.
Mhm.
That was, sort of like embedded in public projects and just maybe should be embedded in public projects of, that there's going to be these funds. So that would be my biggest thing, and I don't know whether you all have any control over that, but I do think that that's like, for me at least, the main issue that relates to construction.
And how is construction overall? What has the impact been on the West Colfax part of
West
Colfax?
Colfax has been less pronounced than on East Colfax because
Mhm.
obviously there's been well, it hasn't changed the traffic patterns as much.
Mhm.
It's only I mean it's a little bit confusing and whatever, but there's still two lanes of traffic going in both directions.
Mhm.
Whereas on East Colfax you have a loss of a now permanent loss of traffic in one direction.
Mhm.
And I think that it has just made the whole thing. And, for if I don't know if that's the only reason, but certainly that, and also maybe the duration of the whole thing, the
Mhm.
length, that is, of the whole thing is very long, much longer than on West Colfax, just a segment of, I think, 2 miles on West Colfax versus I'm sure it's closer to I don't know how many miles. It's longer than that.
Yeah.
I think that having so that's another thing is how long it goes in a sort of and then people start saying, well, that's it. I'm not going to go to South Federal anymore. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like I used to go to
Yeah.
this restaurant and go, I'm not going to bother with that anymore. And I think that's what you really are most worried about when it comes to impacts. And maybe there's a way of actually, now that you're mentioning it, to phase the construction so that it's not, it doesn't just make the whole corridor seem like it's being impacted at the same time
Mhm.
or
Okay.
minimize it. Maybe that's a phasing thing. Go back to the phasing. Could you phase it so that it's like, all the way in the south and all the way in the north, and then you come into the middle or something like that? So that it's less of it less pronounced at any one time that affects and impacts and is perceived by the public as having an impact.
Yeah, that's very helpful. I think it would be great to at some point talk to I am, yeah, thanks. It would be great at some point to
Yeah.
talk in more detail about that and even maybe talk to some of the businesses on West Colfax and um, learn about what has been, challenging, what has been helpful.
Yeah, I mean, that's for sure we could do that, but I mean also why not East Colfax also?
Well, yeah, I mean, we are doing that on East Colfax as well, and we certainly have been coordinating with the project team over there on that. But I don't think we have done, well, I don't know if we've talked to anyone about West Colfax as well. And I think, the impacts of the construction probably will be somewhere in between the two. It may not be as
Right.
big of an impact as East Colfax is, but it might be a little bit bigger than what West
hmm
Colfax is. So
hmm
just trying to like learn from both, I think could be really helpful.
hmm Yeah, and I just back to the biofund. I mean, I just think that's
Mhm.
critical. Um, anyway.
Okay.
We had a few other comments
Mhm.
in the chat. I saw one from Alejandra on-street parking, but that was related to West Colfax. Not sure if you had anything to elaborate. Right. She did mention, though, having
Mhm.
parking agreements between businesses. So anyone that is
Mhm.
affected by on-street parking can send customers to other lots. Then we
Yeah.
had a comment
Mhm.
from Jill about BRT construction.
Yeah, that's a good comment.
Mhm.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the order today?
We had one more question about bike parking at stations.
Yeah, we are looking at that, and I don't think we've gotten into a lot of detail on that yet. So I mean, if you can identify some preferred locations, I know we've talked to Kasser about that but it's been a bit, so I think we need to follow up. We've been mostly focused on the civil design, and so I think now is the time to start thinking in more detail about those types of multimodal connections. Okay. Well, thanks everyone for your time today. Feel free to reach out as always if you have any questions or want to discuss anything in more detail. And good to see everyone and hear from everyone today.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.